Hello, welcome everybody. I'm going to give folks a couple seconds to jump on and then we'll jump right in. I'm trying to keep this to 30 minutes because I know everybody's time is valuable. I want you to wring out every morsel, pun intended, of information in a time efficient manner, but Sarah and I get chatty. So so we
Sure.
go late, but I hope it's going to be valuable information for you today. I am super excited to have this conversation with you all. Just know a couple of housekeeping items for you that you will be able to ask questions. We have the chat open. You can also put some questions into the Q&A and we'll spend some time at the end answering any questions that we can. Yes, we are recording today's webinar. So if you've got to jump off early or you want to come back and listen to it again, you have the option to do that. And I encourage you to share this with any friends or family that you feel like would benefit from this information and would be interested in getting a little nerdy about nutrition today. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. We are going to be talking about eating the rainbow, and this is our winter seasonal eating breakfast edition. So today we are going to talk about seasonal eating, colorful foods, how it is possible, and not only possible, but important to achieve, to make these little simple, delicious choices to upgrade your breakfast this winter, and how to keep it really simple, not to overcomplicate it. And then we're going to also go through some of the tools that you should have received. So hopefully check your email. You should have gotten 2 downloads. One is the rainbow evaluation and one is the rainbow tracker. So we're going to go through the evaluation today. If you have it handy, amazing, do it with us. If you don't, come back to it after and see how you do, but we'll show you how to use those guides to really help to make this stick. First and foremost, my name is Laura. I am a pharmacist and a nutritionist, and I specialize in integrative medicine. I love to talk about how we can incorporate diet in order to really achieve food as medicine, to really utilize our diet, our lifestyle, to really help to upgrade our health. My goal is for longevity. I want you feeling amazing. I want you feeling awesome and setting a really solid foundation for your health goals, whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I've been working with Laura for a year and a half now. I see clients in her practice. And yeah, we've been working on this rainbow challenge, rainbow idea for a long time. So super excited to chat about it and let you all know why we're so obsessed with the idea of eating the rainbow.
Obsessed. This has been a project of passion that we've been working on, and we're really excited and proud of it. So this is amazing and so grateful for you guys joining us today. When we were putting together this PowerPoint, I went to Canva to make a slide and I was trying to make it pretty. And I Googled or I looked up colorful breakfast for photos. And this is what came up. If this does not describe, I think, what the standard American diet is when it comes to the idea of eating the rainbow or eating colorfully, I
Yeah.
really don't know what does. And I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of colorful eating, particularly when it comes to breakfast, which is why we thought this was a really good place to start. Sarah,
That's
what I feel like when we have these conversations with our patients, there's always a handful of reasons I think we all have in common when it comes to why we struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like breakfast is an especially difficult one, or one that I hear a lot with clients as being harder to achieve than lunch or dinner. And I think there's a ton of reasons why that's the case. One of the ones I hear most often is that people don't have enough time. They're too busy in the morning to really spend time making a breakfast. Maybe they're not hungry in the morning, which is another one that we hear a lot, or that they don't know what to eat. I think there's such conflicting information out there, especially around breakfast. And some people have just decided that it's better to not eat at all, or they're maybe doing something more formal like fasting in the morning because they think
Mhm.
it's the better option for a specific health goal, whether that's longevity or weight loss or body recomposition, things like that. And yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons that make a lot of sense why people are confused with
Yeah.
breakfast. foods. But I think that's why we decided to focus on breakfast specifically, just because it's the most important meal of the day. We hear that all the time. And I think that we agree with that in a lot of ways. It really sets the stage for the rest of your day. So it's important one to try to make time for if you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So look to the rainbow evaluation real quick. So this is the point at which you have this PDF ready from your email. Go ahead and open it up. It is a dynamic PDF. So you should be able to click through the answers. So I'm going to share mine with you. And as we're doing this, Sarah, do you want to? It's hard for me to multitask. So tell us a little bit about the rainbow
Yeah,
evaluation,
yeah,
the
yeah.
purpose, and let's do it together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, this is a tool that we use with clients, with people that are interested in doing the Rainbow Challenge, and a great way to establish a baseline. How many colors are you eating? How frequently? What serving size? And gives you a lot of information about that. And when in terms of rainbow, we're really looking at both diversity of color and volume of color. So, it gives you some more information there. And not only does it help establish a baseline for you, but if you decide to participate in the challenge, it really gives you some super actionable steps to take. For example, we're going to go through and talk about the different colors that you're eating, and you may discover, oh, wow, I'm really not eating yellow colored fruits or vegetables. So, yeah, the first section goes into the colors. So, going to have Lara and out, see where she lands.
What's interesting, I always, by the way, this is courtesy of the Better Nutrition Program. And one of my really good friends, Ashley Koff, is the brilliant mind who developed this. And we often joke that orange and yellow is probably the most challenging category for us to get in. And I got to say, in the winter, I think I do a little bit better because I end up eating like sweet potatoes and stuff like that.
Right.
I really struggle with that one. And then in the winter, blue and purple is hard for me to do. I tend to think that as a summer kind of fruit. And I don't do as many smoothies. White and brown is super easy. I feel like I can do that pretty
Yeah.
well. Outside of Halloween and Easter, do you take colors from non-food sources? This is such a brilliant question. So to be fair, I'm not a big candy eater. So I'm pretty good at not doing that. So I can skip that one. So
Cool.
let's go into quantity. Quantity. How many servings of red? I really don't do a lot of red apparently, because I'm not a big fan of tomatoes and peppers. It's just like a me thing.
Mhm.
It is no reflection on how awesome they are. So I'm going to say maybe this is per day, probably less than a serving. Am I doing okay here? How am I doing, Sarah?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the section I think is particularly useful because I think there's a lot of confusion around serving sizes and what does it actually mean to be eating a serving size of something. The kind of title of the section gives you a little bit of a better sense. We're not fans of measuring your food by any means, but I think it's good to have a sense to know that a serving of blueberries is half a cup or whatever it is, to know not only are you eating a diversity of color, but eating enough of the foods to get the benefits of them.
So what I'm learning is I do really well on green. I do great on the white because I do a lot of cauliflower and onions and stuff like that, mushrooms and stuff like that. I am really bad at yellow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you guys are doing over there. If you guys are doing this either alongside me or on your own, but you could see where I'm at. I don't really do. I do some frozen sometimes. I don't do a lot of canned. I do some juiced occasionally. I do blend. I do roast. I saute. I steam. I don't really boil. I don't really microwave. I usually do organic. I don't know if I could say I'm always doing non-GMO. So this last section is to tell us about yourself, Sarah. If you want to just do a little bit of that and talk to us about this a little bit. Why is this so
Yeah.
relevant?
Yeah. So this one is telling us about environmental factors, whether they're present or historical, that might impact things like nutrient need or tell us why we need a specific amount of the colorful fruits and vegetables. So if you have more of these and answer yes about them, could indicate that you need a little bit more support nutritionally and can take that into account when you're doing the evaluation to support that you may be somebody that should be aiming for more of a daily intake, while some other people might be okay with less than that or more than that.
And then that's amazing. Really well said. And then from there, what I want you all to do is to go into this notes section and write down specifically what you want to improve. So for me, it would be I want to be more deliberate eating yellow and orange foods. I want to be more consistent and maybe up the number of servings that I have daily or weekly to include some more of those foods. And again, use this as an opportunity to check in. You do this frequently, weekly, monthly, however often you want. And the goal is not to be perfect. It's not always seasonally. These might shift around for you, but it really helps us understand where we're starting out and what we want to improve on. I'm going to start a little poll question for you. I'm curious to see where you guys are at. Number one, I want to see if you guys have had challenges in getting your breakfast in. So go ahead and vote on that if any of these resonate for you. I'm curious what challenges you from being consistent with your breakfast, number one. And number two, how did you do on the evaluation? Real quick, short answer. Better than you expected, worse than you expected. How are things going for you? And I'll give you guys a couple seconds to answer that while I switch screens over here. So far, I can see the results, but so far I can see that most of you are pretty good with consistency. So that's amazing. We have a power team on here right now. So that's awesome. Amazing. Okay. Let's see. All right. I'll end the poll. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, hopefully you guys can see the results. So a combination of appetite. Oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. Sometimes I wake up and I don't really feel like eating, confused about what to eat. That's why we're here. Welcome. And I love the people that are saying I'm consistent with breakfast. If you have any pro tips, please share them. This is a group learning opportunity. So I love that. Amazing. And how'd you guys do on the evaluation? Let's see. Uh, Rocking the greens. All right, Lily. Amazing. Yeah, I'm good with the white foods too. And those still count, by the way. White and beige is still a color.
Yeah, definitely.
Winter season is challenging. Absolutely. If you have any specific challenges with winter, put them in the chat. We'll try to address them as well. Not as well as I would have liked. Me too, Linda. Me too. Amazing. Okay. So let us keep this going. So why are we focusing on breakfast? Why did we decide to open this up with breakfast? Number one, although there is a lot of hype around intermittent fasting, the data is pretty clear. Folks who consistently eat breakfast have generally better cardiovascular risks, better endocrine risks, or like risk of diabetes, for example, improve blood sugar balance, especially when we factor in fiber intake at breakfast. And overall, it's better for a hormone balance. And that's especially relevant if you're dealing with thyroid issues, if you're looking to make sure that your progesterone and your sex hormones are robust, or if you're dealing with cortisol imbalances.
Yeah, and I think that one piece that we see in the research about the fiber, which really ties into a lot of what we're talking about tonight, is that not only was eating breakfast associated with these better health outcomes and longevity, but the addition of eating a minimum of 25 grams of fiber per day, which for a lot of people they're not reaching, just further strengthen those findings. So it's both a combination of eating breakfast and pairing it with fiber at breakfast and then throughout the day that resulted in these really strong ties to positive health outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, it's that combination. So that's why we put together the rainbow with the breakfast. I have found historically, if I can get somebody's morning off to a good start, those folks, those patients are generally going to experience the most benefit from their program long term. That's because we are kickstarting the day just on the right foot. You're just getting yourself situated right out the gate. That's also often when we're trying to reach a specific goal when it comes to your protein or your fiber intake or a certain nutrient we're trying to get into your diet. If you're skipping breakfast or breakfast is meant and it's not really pulling its weight through the day, then that's a missed opportunity to be able to get those targets. We're making better choices in the morning. It means you're going to be more able to make better choices over the course of the day because you're not like struggling to get to lunch. You're not exhausted right out the gate. This is going to end up supporting your immunity from a combination of having adequate protein, phytonutrients, fiber, all those micronutrients that go into powering your immune system. So that's going to help with your just overall immune balance. It's going to keep you energized throughout the day. And overall, it's going to really set a cornerstone foundation for the rest of the habits and the decisions that you make throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely. And then just two other things I think I want to mention about rainbow and pairing that with breakfast. One of the reasons that we are, as I said, so obsessed with this idea of rainbow is that it really, by focusing on the single task of eating more colorfully, you're really accomplishing multiple things without having to think too much about it. We're really about not making things overcomplicated if we don't have to. We've found that increasing color increases fiber, increases phytonutrients, it increases all of those other micronutrients. And you don't really have to think about it beyond how many colors can I have on this plate. And then the other thing too that we really love about rainbow is that it's really encourages adding foods rather than restricting, which is something that we're really big on as a clinic, as people. And I think the Rainbow Challenge really encapsulates that. And I think really creates a more positive psychological shift towards your eating habits, which I think can also be really important, especially if you're starting to make changes to them. So that's just two other things that we find to be really helpful in the rainbow.
Really well said. It's about abundance because we're talking about the abundance of your microbiome and your bacterial balance, the abundance of nutrients really flooding your body, helping your body really feel nourished and to thrive. And so, with that comes really fueling and feeding your body. And when you're focusing on these types of patterns, when we're talking about the rainbow in particular, what we're talking about is really trying to double down on this concept of phytonutrients or polyphenols. So if you've heard this term before, essentially these are plant or compounds that are found in plants. They are sometimes called phytochemicals. You might have heard polyphenols. Polyphenols is a type of phytonutrients. There's actually tens of thousands. There's an estimated 30,000, but we actually think we're way lowballing the number of phytonutrients that there are. We actually have just started to scratch the surface and understanding what they are and what they do. And they are not really a nutrient. We think of macronutrients are the proteins, fats, carbohydrates, fiber falls in that category. And those are very important to keep in balance. Micronutrients are things like vitamin C and magnesium. And obviously those nutrients are really important for us to balance vitamins and minerals. The third category is phytonutrients. It does its own thing. So examples of phytochemicals or phytonutrients are things like beta glucans, which you can find in abundance in things like oatmeal, carotenoids, which are part of this family of beta carotenes, luteins, zeaxanthines that are precursors to vitamin A. Curcumin is a phytochemical. That's the active ingredient in turmeric that we love so much because of its powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. We've got things like phytoestrogens that are really rich in things like soy that mimic estrogen's function in the best way possible, unlike xenoestrogens, which are non-natural compounds that look like estrogens and can wreak havoc on our body. And all of these things come with their own colors and varieties, and they all come coupled in certain foods in higher abundances than others. So that's why we talk about variety, because the more you cast a wide net and get a different variety of colors and a different variety of foods, the more likely you are to get an abundance of all of these thousands of different chemicals so that they can work in synergy to exert an effect. And the reason we are so obsessed with it is because these have powerful antioxidant properties. They protect against cell damage, meaning that every day our body's machinery, our mitochondria, our cells are chugging along doing its metabolism thing. And they're going to create oxidative stress. And part of the mechanism is naturally to then take antioxidants and neutralize that stress. It's like making sure that we're adding a little water to that fire to make sure that it stays in balance. We want to rev up the machinery, but we need to make sure there's enough antioxidants to protect the machinery at the same time. There's also anti-inflammatory benefits. There's literally like a dozen different mechanisms that balance inflammation. Our immune system is very complex and very expensive mechanism for our body to maintain. So as our machinery is chugging along, trying to make sure it keeps our immune system in check and in balance, these help to promote the anti-inflammatory pathways. There also has hormone protective properties. It helps us metabolize estrogen. It could help us balance our cortisol. It could directly impact our neurological and neurotransmitter balance. It has anti-cancer properties in both prevention and preventing the promotion of cancer cells. So this is a really powerful tool in terms of that particular metabolic state. And of course, again, balances immune function to make sure that we set a foundation that reduces inflammation, but also powers up the right parts of the immune system to make sure that it protects us from any potential foreign invaders. And underneath all of this, swimming, playing a little part in it, is how it impacts the microbiome. Just like fiber feeds the microbiome, these phytochemicals exert a specific interaction on the microbiome that helps that microbiome communicate positive messages and signals. And basically, for the nerds who love a good graphic like me, it's that interaction between those phytochemicals and those nutrients in our body with the microbiome that basically sends signals and messages to our DNA and to the rest of our body that modify our disease risk. And that is what the magic of the rainbow really is.
Pretty amazing.
I think so. But maybe this is starting to explain why we're so obsessed with this topic, because it is such a powerful tool when it comes to maximizing and making the most out of your plates. So, what it comes down to, a colorful, balanced plate that's filled with whole foods, vibrant colors, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, herbs, seeds, nuts. This gives your body a powerful plant-based compound. Those are those phytonutrients. Plus, you're going to leverage all the fiber that's in there, plus all the other micronutrients that are coming along. And this is what our body needs to thrive. This is what helps to program and reprogram our DNA, our epigenetics, to really help us thrive, to fight disease, and ultimately to live the kind of life that we want with lots of energy, lots of passion, and to be able to pursue all the things that we want to do well into our 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and maybe beyond. So when we talk about the color and the rainbow spectrum, we're often talking about reaching this goal of 30 different plants every day, and that can feel overwhelming. So we want to make sure that we pare that down and understand that there's a lot of different things that you can incorporate, but we also want to balance that with the role of protein and making sure that we're fueling our body with protein at the same time.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and one thing to say too with the 30 plants, that obviously seems really daunting. That's a lot of plants to be eating weekly that we see. There's specific research that points to this number. But I think that part of what we do in the Rainbow Challenge is really talk about ways to make that achievable in terms of talking about ways that you can combine vegetables, make dishes that contain multiple vegetables so you don't have to be preparing 30 different vegetables weekly. So we're also aware of people's lives and that you don't have all day to be preparing food. So I think that that's the magic of this program, is that we're really taking what the research is saying, but trying to make it a little bit more practical and sustainable and actually applicable to most people's lives.
Yeah, like real life, because doing this should not be a full-time job, right? This needs to be sustainable and something that's easy to do. But at the same time, once you set these habits up, they become second nature. And hopefully it becomes easier and easier to then continue to make them dynamic, keep them delicious, and yeah, make them doable. So let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about protein and why we're focusing on protein. It's a sort of a coaching strategy that we use with clients. So first and foremost, we all know protein is one of the major macronutrients. We want to make sure that we're getting adequate amounts of protein, but specifically at breakfast, and it is a big part of helping you feel full, energized, and it's going to be one of those cornerstone things that makes you make sure that is fueling your body. Protein itself is made up of amino acids, essential and non-essential amino acids, meaning some that we have to take in from our diet and some that we can make on our own once we have foundational building blocks. There's a ton of other nutrients. I'm not going to get into all the micronutrients and all the different things. We're going to focus in on protein. And if you look at this list, you could see that on one side is animal protein, on the other side is plant protein. And what I really want to, this is not a debate on whether plant versus animal protein. This is not meant to be pro carnivore, pro vegan. This is really meant to be something that you can adapt to fit whatever makes sense for you and your body. But a couple things I want to highlight and point out. most of the highest protein foods are not foods that we typically think of as breakfast food. Like I don't think of like beef brisket as a breakfast food typically. And most of the plant proteins are going to have less protein per serving. And this is, I think, to the kind of comments of I'm not really hungry in the morning or time is an issue. This is where like how much can you squeeze in and get to that protein goal starts to become a little bit of a balancing act.
Definitely. And just to give you a bit more of a sense of what we're aiming for, so we'll get into this a little bit later, but we're looking for around 25 to 35 grams of protein at breakfast. With most major meals, that's ballpark what we aim for. Obviously, it's going to be different person to person, but we found that is generally what we recommend for most people. But that can be really hard, especially if, for example, you're relying on eggs for breakfast. One egg has around 6 grams of protein. So if you're aiming for 30 grams, that's a lot of eggs. You may not want to eat that much, especially if you're somebody who's not that hungry in the morning or it's eggs are expensive. Eating 5 a day is a lot.
Like a mortgage.
So yeah. So I think this is why this chart can be helpful in seeing that which are going to give you the most bang for your buck. What are the ways that you can be layering or pairing different proteins? Maybe you're having some plant-based protein in addition to animal-based protein, pairing things like I do eggs or Greek yogurt or cottage cheese and have both of those things in the morning just to make sure that I'm reaching my goal. But another thing that can be helpful is really starting to expand your idea of what counts as breakfast food. I think that's another kind of goal of ours in the Rainbow Challenge, and mostly for the purpose of making it easier on yourself. When you start to think, oh, I can just have leftovers from the night before for breakfast, suddenly you can make your breakfast in 2 minutes or whatever, however long it takes to heat the food up, and also allows you to rotate in more variety in that first meal of the day, especially protein wise, when we're a lot more narrow with what we typically eat in the morning.
Absolutely. Really well said. I describe this to patients as thinking outside of the cereal box. I think we have been so programmed by media, by commercials. As kids, I remember the commercials for all the cereals, right? Of what breakfast is. And it's generally like the sweet, light, easy thing that you do in the morning. And I think what that's done is imprint on us the idea that is what breakfast is. But historically, traditionally, look across the globe at different cultures and traditional breakfasts, they tend to be really hearty. They tend to be really savory. And that's not to say that you can't do a sweet breakfast, as I love me a sweet breakfast sometimes, but just know that it is possible to make it both a sweet and a savory version that is protein dense, fiber dense, and colorful. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which palette you prefer. What is important is, are you getting the nutrients that you need to really, again, set the foundation and fuel your day? So, what is the purpose? Why protein? Obviously, it's an energy source. We want to make sure that we are getting enough calorically, and we get about 4 kilocalories per gram of protein. But we're not about calorie counting around here. In fact, I deplore calorie counting. I have a whole soapbox on that. If you want to hear it, let me know. But what we want is to make sure that we're getting adequate protein to fuel the production of muscle, bone, and brain. Research keeps showing that as we age, especially as you're getting from your 20s into your 30s, you start to lose protein, muscle, bone. And this starts to set up the foundation for the deterioration and the catabolism that leads to things like osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, and endocrine dysfunction and cardiovascular disease. The more muscle mass we maintain, the more bone density we maintain through our middle age into later stages of life, the more protected we are from those diseases. It also is a building block for all the enzymes, hormones, and neurotransmitters. You want to make dopamine, you need protein. You want to make serotonin, you need protein. You want to literally run any machinery, any of the metabolic functions in your cells, you need protein because that is literally what powers every single one of those functions. And as Sarah, as you mentioned before, it improves satiety and makes sure that you're more full in the morning. Your blood sugar is more stable. You're not doing this like roller coaster up and down with your blood sugar, which then makes you more focused, more alert. You're less likely to be hangry and take it out on your coworkers or your family. And you are more likely to make better decisions when it comes to lunch and dinner and the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think another thing to mention is that I think with breakfast, it's common either whether that's because you don't have time or you think that it's better to fast in the morning, to pair that along with the goal of maybe changing your body composition or weight loss or things like that, which I think again can be the case, but I think that we're a little bit more inclined, especially what we're seeing in the research with eating a breakfast meal in the morning. That if you're going to experiment with any of kind of like fasting to do it a little bit later in the day, kind of be doing yourself a disservice by skipping breakfast if you do have, around body composition and things like that. So it's just
Yeah.
really, important to be prioritizing.
100%. I just want to clarify when you say later in the day, you mean a earlier start time to the fasting window. So the research is very consistent about a couple things when it comes to intermittent fasting. 12 to 14 hours is where we see the most benefit. So we don't necessarily need a 16 or 18-hour, 20-hour window that I've seen in some cases of intermittent fasting, especially if you plan to do it on a daily or regular basis. And
Mhm.
number two, the benefits seem to be the best when you stop eating earlier. So stopping at 6 and fasting until 6 or 7 or 8 a.m. seems to confirm more benefits than stopping at 8 and fasting until 10 a.m., even though the window might be the same. I think to that point, we're still having breakfast and we're still fueling our body when our body is the most sensitive to carbohydrates and can utilize those nutrients the most. And then we're allowing the body to rest and our digestive system to rest overnight and giving it the longest window that we can during that repair phase, during that part of the circadian rhythm.
Exactly.
Amazing. So, what do we aim for when it comes to protein requirements? This is what it's going to come down to. This is what the research says, and then I'm going to tell you what I think. Number one, dietary reference intake recommends zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. What that translates to, if you're 80 kilograms or 175 pounds, that is approximately 65 grams of protein. That is baseline requirement. I have been seeing recommendations as high as twice that, 1.5 grams per kilogram. And I'm not here to debate that today. You want to get into that debate, you let me know, but that's not for today. What I will say is I have found, even myself, even me, who's very conscious of this and I pay attention, I have a hard time even getting that baseline on some days. And very often it's because I'm not eating enough. So let's debunk right away that the idea if your body composition goals or your goals are for longevity, you want to improve your blood sugar balance, it's not about restriction. Most of us actually, when we start to really look at our protein needs, are probably not hitting even the minimum requirement. And arguably, I would actually say that we probably need a little bit more than that if we're sustaining muscle growth, if we're doing bodybuilding, if we're trying to build our muscle, if we're trying to get better at yoga or Pilates or whatever those health goals are in terms of your body composition and your strength, we usually need to up that. In my opinion, we need to be more consistent, and the research is starting to point in that direction. Thanks to amazing researchers like Dr. Stacy Sims and the ilk, we are seeing that we actually could benefit from even going higher. I'm not, we can hyper personalize this for sure, but generally speaking, make sure you're getting protein at every single meal and snack. Generally aim for about 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal. You could go a little bit lower on snacks. You go by half-ish on snacks, but make sure your snacks are also protein centric. And if you're having trouble either digesting the protein, you don't have an appetite, you don't feel like you're not really craving it, you feel like that sits in your stomach and it doesn't move, it doesn't go through your digestive tract, your best friends are going to be digestive enzymes. Taking those, I usually recommend about 15 minutes or at the start of the meal. Adding protein powder, so offsetting the protein content of your meal by doing either a protein shake on the side or something like oatmeal or something like that. You could blend in the protein powder or do a smoothie. And chewing. Chewing is such an underrated, important step when it comes to activating our digestive system. So really making sure you're chewing adequately. I cannot emphasize enough. Again, I am not saying this to point the fingers because I have the same issue. When we're multitasking, we're distracted, we're in a hurry, we get out of the habit of paying attention to how well we're chewing our food.
Yeah, it's I think one of the hardest things to do. I recently tried to eat a meal where I was putting my fork down after each bite and it was almost impossible. And but it is like you said, so underrated and so important to start to activate the whole kind of digestive process and be able to actually utilize the protein that you're eating, which is another issue in itself.
100%. Amazing. Okay, so let's put it all together. As expected, we are over the half hour, but hopefully this is all useful information and it's something that we're going to make actionable right now. And then I want to save a couple minutes to answer maybe 2 or 3 questions at the end. So if you have questions, don't forget them, put them right into the Q&A or into the chat box and we'll grab those at the end. Putting it all together, how do we combine this concept of protein with the rainbow to make a really powerful breakfast? Number one, how we're going to do this in the winter. Here are the top 10, in my opinion, winter veggies that you can incorporate. These are going to cover the whole spectrum of color for sure. Please feel free to add in the chat if we're missing any or you have any other winter favorites. But I think these are pretty easy to find in most grocery stores. Most are available frozen. There was nothing wrong with frozen. I think that's actually a great option, especially with grocery prices going up. Very often, frozen options are great. And I did put any fruit on here, although obviously a great opportunity here, things like apples and pomegranates and citrus fruits. There's some winter berries that are available. And depending where you live in the country or the world, you might have access to even more options. So for sure, take advantage of those. But this is just meant to be like a buffet of options of things that maybe you're forgetting or you're not thinking about as a breakfast option. They're great as repurposed or as a quick something that you could put together in the morning. If you want some inspiration on ways to use it, here are some opportunities here. By the way, after today's webinar, tomorrow you'll get an email that is going to give you some of these high-level takeaways, including this list. So if you want to screenshot this, please go for it, but you'll get this in the email as well.
One thing to mention with this page that we didn't specifically say is that almost everything listed here, actually everything can be made in advance. We're big fans of like batch cooking things. You can make a hash on a Sunday, eat it throughout the week, either for breakfast or other meals. You could do Greek yogurt, make individual containers of that, do either a cooked oatmeal or an overnight oat. These may look a little more complicated than what you're used to for a breakfast, but with a little bit of planning set aside. And again, we try to be conservative and say, meal prepping 2 times a week is usually adequate to be able to set yourself up for success. But that's another aspect of it that kind of can help with if you're somebody that really just doesn't have time for that prep in the morning.
Absolutely. And I'll add that there's also some great kitchen gadgets if you've got the space and the room in your budget for that can make this easier. For example, a rice cooker. It is a game changer. I have a little tiny one that I bought on Amazon. It's a stainless steel interior, so it's non-stick. And what it allows me to do is get up, set it up, and then go and get everything else done. So for like busy moms, you take the kids to school, do whatever you got to do, get people ready, get them out the door. I work from home, so sometimes I'll set it up, go jump on a meeting. When the meeting's done, I can go grab my breakfast, and you can make almost anything in there. I know it's called a rice cooker, but you can make quinoa, oatmeal, any grain. Sometimes I'll even warm up veggies in there as well. So that's a great option because it's something that you could set and walk away. If you've got an Instapot or a slow cooker, those are also work in a similar concept. So there's so many tricks and ways to make this make sense in the morning. And then Sarah, I absolutely double down and love the idea of repurposing, taking dinner and having it for breakfast or repurposing it in your lunch from the day before, doubling the batch so that you have leftovers. All amazing ways to get around that time barrier when you can plan ahead. Like, yeah. Quick wins, questions you're going to ask yourself. This is how we're going to put this into action. You already know what colors you are short on because you did the rainbow evaluation with me. Number two, you know where you need to maybe spend a little extra time. So write it down in the notes of your evaluation. What color do you want to focus on next? And how much do you want to aim for? Maybe you'll do 2 colors. Maybe it's 3 colors. Whatever makes sense for you, where you're at right now. And when you sit down to your meal, I want you to ask yourself, did I add a veggie? Is there a veggie on this plate? Number two, you're going to ask yourself, how much protein is on this plate? And number three, you're going to ask yourself, can I squeeze in one more color? Okay. Could be an herb. It could be a nut or a seed topping, a sprinkle. It could be a side of a fruit. Doesn't matter. Can you squeeze in one more color? And you'll be impressed with yourself what you could come up with, where all of a sudden, like, you went from one color to four colors just because you added a sprinkle of an herb, plus you added like some nuts on top, and then you found some pumpkin seeds. And all of a sudden now you've quadrupled the amount of color you have on your plate.
Totally.
What are we going to do next? As we are thinking about our next steps, you guys have in your email the rainbow evaluation, and you have what's called the rainbow tracker. So that is right out the gate. You have a couple of tools that can get you started ASAP. I also want to let you know we are actually starting the first Rainbow Challenge course and support group in January. So that is a 4-week program. You basically log in when you register. Once you register, you can log in. You have access to the course throughout the month. You actually have that content forever. And for January only, this is usually just a course you can start and stop whenever you want. But because we're so excited about this program, because this is our inaugural release, we wanted to also create a support group. So for anyone who joins for January, or anyone who joins between now and January 1st, you'll also be invited to a weekly group coaching session where we'll have the opportunity to answer questions, chat about different topics, help you get over any hurdles or obstacles, and really help you personalize this to wherever you're at and whatever your goals are and whatever your preferences are. So that starts in January.
Yep.
That's option number one. There's also an ebook that has all the information in it. So if you're a DIYer, you're a person who likes to do it on your own by yourself, you can purchase that book and go at your own pace. You get everything, including a step-by-step on how to incorporate these, but you just don't get access to the group coaching. So if you're more of a on your own, you want to do this at your own pace, you want to take 3 months to do the first week, that's all you. And then option 3 is to take the 2 tools you already have and take the note that you made yourself on your evaluation and use that and start to quiz yourself maybe every week. Take the evaluation again and see if you've made any progress. And included with that is the Rainbow Challenge tracking tool. So you could basically download this or use this right on your computer and check off. How did you meet your goal? What was your goal? Did you meet your goal? And that way you can stay accountable and do your own self-coaching and reflection on what worked and what didn't work so that you can continue to make progress at whatever pace makes sense for you. So with that, if you have any questions, you can email us.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, hopefully got a few tips from this and can start implementing things. But yeah, definitely slow and steady is the goal.
And if you guys start implementing this, tag and take a picture, tag us on Instagram, and I'd love to see what you're already creating. Have a great day.